Sorry about that, folks. I had a delivery. Thank you, my friend in England, um, for sending treats for the dogs and food for the cat. Thank you very much. Bless your heart. Thank you. So, so I I obviously get kicked out of school, and I I think that was the first time I kind of came into contact with psychiatrists, psychologists. I think I saw an educational psychologist first. I think that was the first. And they did an assessment on me. And then I saw a psychiatrist who turned out to be the same psychiatrist that had assessed my brother a few years previously. And he was the one that had sort of been instrumental in trying to get the grant so that my brother could go away to a normal school, and they felt that was the best thing for him at that time. So I go along, because they obviously think there's, I'm troubled, and I mean they know, the school knew that I was having issues at school. Obviously, they knew the family background. So I go to see this, psychiatrist. They write reports on me, and the school at the time didn't think it would be beneficial for me to return, either for the school or for me. So I was asked to go and attend voluntarily this psychiatric adolescent unit that they had at the time, and it was about 15 miles away from where I lived. And the idea would be that I would attend there Monday to Friday, and then Friday I would get the bus back and I would come back home, and then get the bus back on a Monday and go back to this unit. And I mean, the laughable thing was that most of the kids that had issues, that had been, expelled from the school I was at, actually got sent to this unit. So a lot of us knew each other. We were all basically from the same town. And it was a kind of psychiatric unit where they believed in using drugs for kids. And because obviously I had anger issues, and they felt that, it'd be helpful if I went on to medication. So I remember they used to, dish out this Valium. It was Valium I was on, at 14. So I used to have to, they'd stand there and watch you take it. We used to try and hide it and spit it out, but it was also, it was, the unit was attached to the mental hospital that was across the road. So if any of the kids in this unit got, too out of hand, they would send the guys in the white coats from across the road at the mental hospital to come over and basically stick a needle in your bottom and drag you over to a padded cell. And as you can imagine, it was chaos, because you've got all these kids in this unit who've all been, kicked out of school because they've got issues, or, their behaviour has got to the point where the school can't control them. So we were all sent to this unit, and it was a laugh a minute. I mean, I can remember throwing food up the walls, and you'd have to have therapy, and you'd sit there, and we used to jump out the windows at night and go down to the town, and then they changed my medication from Valium, and I was put onto an antipsychotic, and they weren't tablets, it was a liquid. And when I used to go home on a weekend, I used to have to take this medication with me. And I never used to want to take it because, it would knock you out. It was, I mean, I had these same drugs given to me later on when I was in prison. And, they refer to them as liquid gosh because they just knock you out. So anyway, my behaviour just went wild because, I was having a ball. I was coming home weekends, still had my pony. Somewhere sort of in this time period, we had to leave where my ponies were grazing, and my pony was moved to the school of equitation that was in the village, which was handy in the sense that, they would use her for riding for disabled or whatever, and for riding lessons, and I would be able to, I'd get free livery. But I also worked down there and was down there at every opportunity. So even though I was at this unit, I was coming home at weekends and I still had my pony. And I sold my first pony because I wanted something with a bit more, bit more of a challenge, bit more oomph. So I sold my first pony. We'd already sold the foal. So I sold my first pony and got a second pony. And she was as wild as could be. She'd basically just been left, turned out, and she was wild. And I got her for next to nothing. And, anyway, so it was quite funny because the riding school of equitation, wanted to use my second pony for riding for disabled. And I said, well, she's not safe. She's, she couldn't even walk in a straight line. She was wild. She turned out to be a lovely pony, but she was 14-1, little light bay mare, and she wasn't as feisty as Sherry in character wise, but she was a nice pony. So obviously we'd had to give up the grazing, probably because my mum couldn't afford the grazing fees at the farm. So the horse was, transferred to the other stables. So I was still had my ponies, still went down at weekends, but during the week I was having a riot. I mean, we were living the life of Riley. There were some very damaged kids that were in this unit. And as I say, if you didn't, do what they told you to do, i.e. go to bed when they told you to go to bed, then, their answer was to get the guys over and, out the needle would come and you'd get it stuck. Unfortunately, that never happened to me. It wouldn't have happened to me, but no, fortunately. But I did witness that happen several times. So my mum used to come up and visit. I think it was on a Wednesday evening. They had like visitors, so families and stuff could come up, and a couple of my friends actually came and visited. I think from school, and my mum came up, with this man she was with, and he was trying to, lay the law down, telling her to tell me, I couldn't do. And I had a boyfriend at the time, and my boyfriend obviously used to come up and visit me. He was a nice guy, and one day my mum's sitting there, and the man she's with says, you've got to not see this boy anymore. And he started laying the law down, saying, when you come home, it's going to change, blah, 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 blah. And there was this massive, and I mean really big, heavy, one of those big, chunky, big glass ashtrays, because we were allowed to smoke in there. I mean, all the staff smoked, we smoked, And I just picked this ashtray up and I just threw it like a frisbee across the room, and it just hit this bloke straight in the head. And of course he, flew off his chair and there's blood, and I just stormed out. I just walked out and I said, you're not effing telling me what to do. You're not my dad. I used to throw that at him quite a bit. And of course my mother is still drinking like a fish. And the laughable thing is that this man she's with is a teetotal. It's hilarious. So of course he got the brunt of all her, drunken rages and ridiculous stuff that she used to, come out with. And my you know, reaction to him trying to tell me what to do was just made things worse. And I was at this unit, I guess, probably 9 months, maybe 9 months. And as I say, my anger, I had anger issues, obviously, and I didn't have any respect for authority, whether it be, a policeman, whether it be a teacher, whether it be, the staff at this psychiatric adolescent unit. And I have to say that, looking back on some of the practices that, they did, I mean, it was, it's abuse, really. I mean, you can't force medication down a 13, 14-year-old kid. It's crazy. Anyway, I had another similar sort of breakdown while I was at this unit. And I just remember crying and crying and crying. I couldn't stop crying. I think I cried for like 2 days solid, and I wouldn't stop. And I could hear the staff saying, "Oh, she's seriously mentally ill, she's going to have to be committed and all this." And so I could hear what was going on. And it all came to a head one night because we slept in sort of dormitories. The boys were in one end and the girls were supposed to be in the other end, but obviously, I had a lovely relationship, platonic relationship with a guy who was from my hometown, actually, and lovely guy, just incredibly screwed up, very severely mentally damaged. But I remember we used to sit and cry together, and I used to just cry on his shoulder, and he'd just comfort me. There was no sex, nothing like that. It was just two people comforting each other. It was like a sort of brother-sister kind of relationship, really. And it all came to a head because there was a girl who was at the unit, and she used to irritate everybody. She was just one of these kids that nobody really used to hang about with. But she also suffered from epilepsy. And she was put in the dormitory where I was, sleeping. And I remember she wouldn't stop snoring this one night. So I threw pillows at her, and, I think a couple of times I actually considered putting a pillow over her head. Anyway, I ended up dragging her out of the bed and, being violent towards her. And that was the point where they actually said, we can't have you here anymore, which was what happened to a lot of the kids that were in there, including this lad that I was close to. He got booted out just before I did. And, he went on to go to Borstal and prison, and, so most of the kids that were there, they were damaged. And if you, if you didn't toe the line, then, basically, you weren't doing what they wanted treatment wise, then they would, get rid of you. So that all came to an end, and I was sent back home. So I go back to live with mum, and this man that she's moved into the house, who, he wasn't violent, he wasn't nasty in any way. He was just they were just so opposite, my mother and this guy. And as I say, I think she just, after Dad went, she was lonely. It was on the rebound. She decided, it would be nice to have somebody else to know. But she was drinking, and so, every evening she would be drunk, and she'd start on this bloke, and he wasn't violent. He never retaliated, and he would just sort of walk out, or But I mean, she was vile. She was very cruel in the things that she said, and it wasn't nice for him. And he'd sort of moved in, and I was kicking off everywhere, and it was a difficult situation, but he stuck around, and so I was back home. So obviously I'm not at school. They won't have me back at the school, and I'm 14, and so I'm spending all my time with the horses, and they were trying to. The education services, I mean, it wasn't, social services weren't involved at that point or anything. It was just educational psychologists, psychiatrists. And the school had decided, obviously, they didn't want me back. So they were looking at another option for a residential school for me to go to try and get my exams and stuff and finish school. And so for a little while, I had a home tutor, which, was great. And it happened to be the headmaster's wife of the school that kicked me out, who also happened to be a Christian. So, throughout this period of total, nuttiness, I've got these people who actually go above and beyond to try and help me. And this dear lady gave up her time to meet me in the town twice a week, and she would take me for coffee and cake, and she obviously understood that I was emotionally the way I was because of things, and so she encouraged me to write essays about my horse. And one thing she said was, you're really good at English, Lucy. You should write your story. But she used to take me into the church, and we'd do brass rubbings. And I mean, it sounds incredibly boring to those who, think brass rubbings. But to me, somebody was showing an interest in me, and, she was a lovely lady, and she really tried to kind of help me, the best that she could, which, I'm very grateful for, actually. I used to look forward to those appointments, going into town and meeting up with her. So I think, in this unit that I'd been just kicked out of, there was a girl that I was quite friendly with, and she'd been sent to a secure unit where, the unit I was at, you could come in and go out, but as soon as you walked out, they would call the police, basically, to come and take you back. Or as I say, they would send the guys over from the loony bin to take you back. And this particular girl that I'd been friends with, she'd been sent to a secure unit further, up the country. And I'm at home one night, and there's a knock on the door, and I open the front door, and it's this girl, and she's going, "I'm on the run. I've broken out of the secure unit that I'm in. I'm on the run. You got to help me." Anyway, obviously, I went and asked Mum, and she said, "Well, she's not staying here. She's not staying at the house, So I slept rough with her that night in the park in the town. And, she didn't want to go back to this. She'd got some bloke on a motorbike when she escaped this secure unit, and he brought her to my house. So I slept rough with her that night. And obviously my mum, I think she'd had to ring social services, basically. And the police had been informed. And the next morning we were sitting in the Wimpy, because we had a Wimpy. And we walked out of the Wimpy after we'd had our, burger and whatever. And these police sort of just dived on this girl. And obviously she was taken to the police station. She was taken back, obviously to the secure unit. And I never saw her again. That was the end of it. Anyway, as I look across the road, my mum and this man that she's with, they're there as this girl's being arrested. And so I then turn round and start screaming a load of abuse at the police who were, trying to arrest my friend. And they said, "If you don't shut up, we'll arrest you." So, of course, me being me, carries on, boom. So next thing, I'm arrested. I get taken over, to the police station, which was, just across the road. And then obviously, they have to get an appropriate adult because you're only, 14 or whatever. So obviously my mum and this bloke come into the police station, and by that time I think there was an emergency social worker that had been called, and she was lovely. I have to give her that. She was lovely. And they said, "Well, we're going to have to go to court and get an emergency care order placed, on you." And I'm like, "What? What?" So I was allowed home, and I think literally within a couple of days, my mum actually went and stood up in the court and actually said to the judge, "My daughter's out of control. I can't do anything to control her," because obviously my behaviour, I was kind of staying out. I was going off on my own, staying out at night, looking after my horse, doing all that, but just going off on my own. I'd started sort of self-harming. I was beginning to cut my arms, and things were getting pretty bad. And so obviously I get this emergency care order slapped on me. My mother basically begged them to do something to help me, I think, because she couldn't. I mean, she was still drinking. She was dealing with this bloke she's with, and I don't think she couldn't cope with me, obviously. So I'll leave it for there on this one. So I get this emergency care order put on me, which then sees me moved into a children's home in the same town, actually, that the psychiatric adolescent unit was located at. But this then began another another chapter down the road to, you know, uh, to another series of events. So I'll leave it there now because that's pretty long, and I've had to do 2 videos. So yeah. So thank you for listening, and we'll pick up when I go into a residential care home on the next one.